and I both know that when we look back on our lives, what seemed to be the greatest curse, more often than not, turned out to be the greatest blessing. And often, what seemed to be the greatest blessing was, well, not such a blessing at all. Knowing that, we might as well love what is at every moment. Hi, I'm Deborah Poneman, founder of Yes to Success seminars, where we offer knowledge and tools for you to live your ultimate life. The person who helped me internalize this concept of loving what is was the great teacher Byron Katie. Her body of knowledge, called The Work, is based on the realization she had when she woke up. And that is, when you believe that something should be different than the way it is, you suffer. When her thought was something like, my husband should be nicer to me, or my children should respect me, and the reality is he isn't, and they don't, she suffered. And that when she believed, or when she didn't believe those thoughts, when she didn't believe that anything should be any different than exactly as it was, she experienced peace. She had her awakening when she realized that what had been causing her deep depression was not the world around her, but her belief that the world around her should be different than it was. And when she had her awakening, she saw that there were really no mistakes in the universe. Katie says that through the lens of our own self-inquiry, we can have true peace. She says that our attempt to find happiness is backwards. Instead of hopelessly trying to change the world and the people in it to match our thoughts about how it should be, we can instead question our thoughts. And by loving reality exactly as it is, we can experience freedom in the end of our own suffering. One way her work has always helped me through tough times in my life is by my simply asking a question that she taught me to ask, and that is, how do you know that this is supposed to be exactly the way it is? And the answer is, because it is. If you argue with reality, you will always lose, but only 100% of the time. She shouldn't have lost that election. How do you know she should have? Well, because she did. He shouldn't have died. How do you know he should have? Well, is he alive anymore? No. So when something is very painful in my life, I simply ask myself, how do I know this is supposed to be exactly the way it is? And the answer is always because it is. If it were supposed to be another way, it would have been that way. And this has helped me through little things and big things, like when my kids were little, and when your kids hurt, you hurt like 10 times more, 100 times more. Like when my daughter wasn't invited to a party, and I would just be dying inside, and I would think, how do I know that it's perfect that she wasn't invited to this party? Because she wasn't. It's not, oh, she should have been invited to the party. No, she shouldn't have. She wasn't. Or when Daniel, when he was a basketball player, and the ball would be thrown to him so that he would take the winning shot, and he would miss it, and it was like the big tournament game, and I'd be like, oh my, I can't believe. How do I know it was supposed to happen that way? Because it did. Argue with reality, you will always lose. And again, I don't know the ripple effect. I don't know what would happen that now the other team won and the other team went to the tournament. I don't know how many lives were changed because those kids won the game and not my son's team. I love the story that Katie tells that after she had her awakening experience, which, by the way, was in a halfway house. She was an alcoholic and a rageaholic, and her family couldn't deal with it anymore. She didn't get out of bed for years. Finally, they just put her in some halfway house, and she was just raging while she was there. So they put her up in solitary confinement in some room at the top of the building. And while she was raging in the room, a cockroach walked across her foot. And at that moment, she went into a state of enlightenment. She looked out the window and she was totally at peace. And she saw the perfection of every single thing that was going on. Anyway, after she had her cockroach experience, she would have these little groups in her home in Barstow, and people who she didn't know started showing up at her door to meet the enlightened woman. And she would open the door and they would go, Namaste, Namaste. Well, she had absolutely no idea what Namaste meant. And she thought that they were saying, no mistakes, no mistakes. And she would go, you're absolutely right. So once you accept that we live in a benevolent universe and you realize the utter perfection of creation, then, hey, you will fall to your knees. You will know that there is a way to overcome every obstacle. You might not know how to, but the intelligence who created the universe and the obstacle in the first place does know how. And you can give that obstacle to the intelligence and surrender and know that your miracle is on its way. Maybe not as soon as you think that you would want that miracle to arrive, but it will arrive exactly when it's supposed to. I was just thinking that the Reverend Dr. Barbara King, now deceased, who was a dear friend of mine, she was the minister of the Unity Church in Atlanta. In her book, Transform Your Life, she said this. She said, this sense of all rightness may not come the first time we seek it or even the second. We may feel like our prayers are not being heard. We may wonder if we're praying correctly or even if prayer is the thing to do in these circumstances. At these times, it doesn't hurt to keep in mind the wisdom of our elders who understood and who were a bit more patient than we seem to be in the workings of God. She said, my grandfather, for instance, used to say about Jesus bringing grace into our lives, he may not come when you want him to, but he will always come on time. So I'll end today with one more quote, and I'd love to give credit, but I have no idea where I heard this. And it goes like this. Don't require the universe to move more rapidly than it is. It is actually working perfectly, and it will prove that to you if you will just give it a chance. So have a wonderful week, knowing that when you think that something should be different than it is, that is when you suffer. So for your own happiness, it's really best to love what is. Bye for now.